Hello, everyone, and welcome back. So, it's been some time since I've done a live, and I'm happy that I'm back today with a very good friend of mine, Reza Haraji, and he'll be joining shortly. So, missed you guys. Really been busy lately, but really looking forward to hosting Reza today, an exceptional tailor who really takes a very interesting approach towards tailoring. So it should be a really, really fun conversation. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Just gonna say hi to everyone. So yeah, thanks again, everyone. This is really exciting. I'm really happy to be doing this again. And it looks like Reza has joined. So let me go ahead and get him invited. Excuse me for invitation sent. All right, so momentarily he will be joining us. And in case you don't know, actually, you know what? I'm going to wait until he's on. And there he is. Reza, how are you, sir?
Not too bad. How are you, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining.
Pleasure is mine, man. Thank you for inviting.
Yeah, man. I'm so excited for this. I don't know if you could tell. I'm even like blushing a little bit. So in case no one knows, and I don't think many people do know, Reza is the reason Besmoke exists on Instagram. I had a personal account, and I reached out to Reza one day, and we were talking, and had this crazy idea about combining men's, classic menswear looks and barbecue. And most of the people who I've ever spoken to about that just kind of laughed it off. He was like, "That's the greatest thing I've ever heard," and we talked a lot about menswear, tailoring, barbecue. We've had this conversation we're about to have probably 100 times over at the oddest hours in the night and during the day. And I'm really happy that finally I've been able to get Reza on here to speak, in person, introduce him to the people who follow what I like to do, and really get your word and who you are out there. So welcome, man.
Well, I do have to say one thing though. The account Besmoke is all because of you.
Oh.
It's you who came up with the word and did all the ideas and all the work. I was just there to listen with you and just to get the conversation. So thank you for that. I'm well, man. I've been looking forward to our conversation. I think we tried to plan this for a while now, and I'm curious to see where the conversation is going to take us.
So, I always like to keep the conversations kind of unscripted. I joke around and say I want it to be like an Italian shoulder, right? Deconstructed and just we'll go as we go. And so I do always like to ask, what can't we talk about? And so Reza was very clear and, listen, no topics off. I'm not going to list out the topics he said we can do. But they were broad and very interesting. And what's interesting is my daughter, who's supposed to be in school right now, just joined the live to view. So I don't know if I'm honored or if I should be bothered, but we'll discuss that when she gets home.
What happens when you become famous?
Oh, yeah. Miami famous, I guess. So Reza, let's talk about, so firstly, where are you now? And where geographically are you located?
I'm in London at the moment, in Battersea.
Battersea, okay.
Yeah.
And so you started off on your own venture, and obviously you were, so let's rewind back. What got you into tailoring to begin with?
A very bad take. I was studying graphic design in The Hague, and I was never really fashion conscious or anything tailoring conscious. If anything, I wasn't really aware that there was such thing as bespoke tailoring to that sense. Like similar to a conversation I had with a friend of mine, he said that I thought tailors were just alterations people. So during graphic design, I met someone from Iran, where I'm originally from, and he had a very nice pair of trousers. And so that made me think, like, how can he have such a nice pair when I'm always having issues with fit? Because I was very conscious about fit. So I asked him, and he said, well, I know someone in Iran who's like the best, greatest tailor ever. And I said, well, I'm going to Iran this summer. If you're going as well, maybe we could go together. And so we went there, and a very, very long story short, we met the tailor, and the tailor kind of like took some measures, and he was like, come back next week. We go back next week. He's not there. And so that was planned to be like about a month, was extended to 3 months. And I still didn't get the jacket that I was measured for. So when I went back to the Netherlands, I got my jacket probably like 6 months later. And when I had the jacket, I put it on, and we were like both really excited. And I stood in front of the mirror and put the jacket on, and it just didn't go on. And kind of crawled into the jacket. And when I crawled in, it was something like the shoulders were like up here, like above me. And so, you know, I was like, huh, this is very strange. And my friend was like, oh, I don't think suits look good on you. I don't think your body type is built for. And so, you know, being like a craft-orientated person, I thought, I think I should try and see if I can do something. You know, I used to make things from wood, and I was good with paper crafts and stuff like that. So I asked my mom, we have a sewing machine, right? And she was like, yes. And I said, well, can you show me how to thread the sewing machine? And she said, well, why would you want to do that? And I said, well, I just need to try something. And so she showed me how to do that. And on the same evening, I made like a pair of shorts, like very basic, something for my girlfriend. And that turned out to be something okay. And I thought, maybe this is something I'd like to explore further, because I wasn't really happy during graphic design. I wasn't getting enough satisfaction out of it. And so I did a few commercial patterns, shirt patterns, just to test out to see if I really like this. And then I thought, well, I'd like to do this a bit more serious. So luckily there was this tailoring school, sewing school, fashion school, sewing school, close to us. And I went there and I said, I'd like, you know, apply to this course, and I need to do. And they said, well, just make something to show us what skills you have, and we'll give you like a final answer whether you're being accepted or not.
Wow. Okay.
I made a pair of I think I made, what did I make? I made a shirt. I made a Hawaii shirt, and when I submitted my application, I had a conversation with the manager of that department, and he said, look, I don't think this course is really for you, because you seem to know what you want, and you seem to be able to make a shirt. This course is really for teenagers who want to do something with fashion but don't know what, and so they just apply for it. And I said, okay, that's very nice, but what am I going to do? He said, go to Italy. And I said, that's not what I expected at all. So I did some research. I found Savile Row. Within like a month, I moved to London, and that's where it all started, man.
And so when you got to London, so you talked about going to this school to enter and learn. So here you come to London, Savile Row, right? Like the epic center of it all.
Yeah.
And that had to be a little intimidating, I would imagine. So where did you first go, and how did you, introduce yourself or get into the front door to begin with?
Mm-hmm. So what happened was I enrolled in a course at Newham College, which was like a bespoke tailoring course. My plan was to do like level 1, 2, and 3, which would take about 2.5 to 3 years. Okay. Learn how to make a jacket perfectly, and then go to Savile Row, so that they have no reason to kind of like declare presence there. But then my friend Joshua, who some of you may know from Dobrik and Lawton, he was in the same course with me. And he said, look, man, I'm going to go to Edward Sexton next week. And so I think you should just go there and go to Savile Row and introduce yourself. And, even if you can't make a jacket, just go. And I thought, okay, I'll do that. So 1 week after my arrival in London, I go to Savile Row kind of like show my padding and some of my work that I've been doing. And I was planning to go to Huntsman. But for some reason, as I was walking towards Huntsman, there was this other shop called Chittleborough and Morgan before Huntsman, and it was in the basement area. And as I was walking past, it kind of like caught my eye. It didn't look like a fancy shop. It was like a small workshop, it seemed, you know, with not much on the display. And so I just walked downstairs instead of going to Huntsman's. And I walked downstairs, and it was early morning. I wish I remembered which day it was, but I don't.
Oh, come on. You can't recall the day and time of your journey, you know?
I think it was a Monday. So I walked downstairs. I had a portfolio of all these small padding stitches that I had done.
Mm-hmm.
And I knocked on the door, and Michael Brown opened the door, and because he was working there at the time. And so he opened the door, and I said, hi, can I, you know, come in? Looked at me, it was like, okay. So as soon as I walked in, I said, hey, I'm Reza, you know, this is my portfolio, I've been doing this, and I showed my stitches, and he liked it. And I said, you know, can I do some work experience here? He said, Joe Morgan, the owner, isn't here. He's on holiday. He's going to be back, I think, you know, in 2 days or so. So come back perhaps the next day. I think it was the next day. Mm-hmm. So I went there the next day, and I was introduced to Joe, and that's how my work experience of 2 days a week started.
So that's how you started, 2 days a week. And yeah. What did they bring you on to do? So work experience is an apprenticeship, meaning you're working and not getting paid, you're just getting the experience, or were you earning at that point?
No. So the work experience was basically I come in 2 days a week, I'll do whatever they give me to do. And then after a year of doing 2 days a week, I actually got formally employed as an apprentice. So I would do full time there and get paid.
So when we think of London, Savile Row, tailoring, right? There's obviously a very rich history and mm-hmm. traditional, customary ways of doing things. And one of the things I absolutely love about you and your designs and the way your thought process works is to take that and kind of shake it up a little bit and redirect it in different ways. Mm-hmm. I still feel that you hold true to the roots, but you put your own artistic, you know, impression on it as well. Mm-hmm. That whole process sounds pretty long, and I imagine it would weed out a lot of people who are not interested. So mm-hmm. is that the customary traditional way of doing it, or was this kind of something where somebody said, you know what, we want to get you the type of experience you need in order to work here?
Well, I think what was unique about my situation and Chittleborough Morgan itself was that I was planning to just learn the traditional way of tailoring, whatever that means. I didn't even know what that means. I just thought I had this idea that I will be sitting or standing next to an experienced tailor, and they would show me everything they do, and I would just do it. Right? Now, this was a very idealized image that I had in my mind of that master tailor. So keep that in mind. The other thing that was also going on was that Roy Chittleborough had just retired a year before that, and so the company was kind of like was going through some changes. And I think what he was planning to do, he wanted to have a lot of younger student apprentices there to kind of like learn whatever they are going to learn. He was fairly open and very, very tolerant about what people could do. And he was very, very incredibly patient. So if he would give you something to do and you would do something else, you know, he wouldn't tell you off in a way, you know, so that you would ever. He would very calmly and kindly say, you know, you could do this, or maybe you could do that. And that worked very well for me. And I think because temperament was so that as soon as someone would tell me off in a very direct way, I would rebel against that. And I had the luck that exactly.
Right.
And I was incredibly lucky that Joe wasn't like that. So, but at the same time, we didn't have really an in-house tailor apart from the alterations tailor, whose name was Johnny. And he wasn't really the tailor that Joe wanted to teach everybody, you know, kind of like, oh, go and learn with him.
Right.
And so we didn't really have something in-house. And what we would end up with was kind of like improvising our way through the ideas that Joe maybe had in his mind, and everyone would do something else. Everyone would have their own interpretation of what Joe had in his mind. So if Joe said, you know, I'd like to have a straight shoulder line, every person would think of some sort of a technique that they could do that would give that best. So it was very, and at the same time, you know, he was trying to get some sort of a structure, but it wasn't kind of like happening. And so I managed to improvise my way with the artistic tendencies that I had toward what I was learning at the time. So that's basically how it went.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because my next question that I was brewing in my head was, you know, you came from a design background. And I know that many people who go into fashion have that, because that creativity has to be there. But when you look at suits, they kind of all look the same in their structure, right? So obviously, and I'm gonna, you know, the picture I posted of you for the story, I can't tell you how many replies I got to that story about the silhouette, the shoulders, the lapels. I mean, exceptional. I think you know that though. So when it comes to artistic interpretation and artistic impression into tailoring and into clothes making for menswear, particularly suits, or classic menswear, how much leeway are you giving to do that?
Well, how much leeway am I personally giving, or how much could anyone give to?
I think you could get really creative with it, but when you're working in a place on Savile Row and they have, you know, this established house style, for lack of a better term, how much leeway are you given within those parameters to kind of, you know, you're talking about how he said, I want this, and you were given some free avenue to do it. So during that time, how much leeway were you given, and what's to be expected for somebody who might be interested in becoming a tailor?
Right. So I think the best answer I could give was, I couldn't do whatever I wanted, but like I couldn't come up with like an Alexander McQueen design and be like, hey, let's make it like this. But the things that I was kind of like focused on and working on and trying to give an artistic turn to it were the things that wouldn't really change the house style that much. So for example, when I was doing work experience, I was giving a lot of padding, canvases to pad. And when you're padding all the time and you're someone who is creative, at some point your mind is going to be like, all right, what can I do with this so that it doesn't become another canvas to pad, for example. So so everyone was, for example, doing white padding stitches with a basting cotton. And then at some point I thought, maybe I should do them in color. Now, this wasn't really a radical idea. I'm sure before me, all these hundreds of years, tailors have probably done the same. But then I just did it. So I did it, and I thought, oh, maybe I should combine a few colors to create like a shade or whatever. So I did that, and then I got positive reactions on it. And then suddenly Joe was like, oh, let's all do the paddings in color because it looks so much better. And that was good, because that's like a very good confirmation you get from your master, let's say. Sure. And then I thought, what can I do more? And so one day we had a client who had a lot of pets and a lot of cats and a lot of dogs. And so I thought maybe I should pad the canvases in the silhouette of a cat. So what I did was I made this template of the silhouette of a cat. I chalked it out and I started to pad within that, and that photos circulated for some time on Instagram as well. But then again, I got a lot of positive reactions on that. Not most of the tailors there wouldn't really say much about it. They would just either say, yeah, it's nice, or some of them like, you know, this is absolutely ridiculous, you shouldn't do this, nobody sees this? This is rubbish, blah, 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 blah. And I couldn't really care, did it. So Joe didn't mind it. As long as he was okay with it, I would just do it. And so that then slowly evolved. And then I think the next thing I did that I'm really passionate about and kind of like obsessed with, I had a 3-hour journey from the place I lived to work. So I had plenty of time in the train to just sit there and think about what can I do? What can I do? What can I do?
Was this a 3-hour one way or 3-hour total?
Total.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's still a hefty travel. I mean, that's...
Yeah. So I thought, I heard one of the clients once say to Michael, who was also working there, like, hey, you guys need to have your own pocket because Camps de Luca has their own pocket. And that made me think. I thought, I should design a pocket. And so I started to design pockets. I kind of like made sketches, and I started to sit in the train and think about how, okay, this is going to fold back this way and that's going to fold back that way. And so I made a design and I showed it to Joe, and he was like, oh yeah, this is very good. Did you get this from the ready-to-wear people? Literally. And I said, no, this is my own design. But he didn't he didn't go along with it. He was just like, oh yeah, okay, good work. But he didn't say, okay, let's all change our pockets now. So because he didn't do that, but did like the padding, I thought maybe he's not convinced. So I started to design even more pockets and kind of like push more. Little did I know that Joe didn't want new pockets. He just wanted to have someone who learns how to make a good jacket. But my mind was already set on designing a new pocket and new this and new that, until conversation started to happen about a concave shoulder line. And what you have to understand is that a lot of things within tailoring that have an aesthetic effect have to be worked out technically as well. So if you say, I want to have, I don't know, wide shoulders, you don't just make wide shoulders. You have to understand which techniques you have to apply. If you make the shoulder wider, which other points you may have to alter, etc., etc. There wasn't anyone in that company that could work out a concave shoulder line. And that would get Joe really frustrated. And all the tailors would just put either like a big pad or try to change the line of the shoulder seam, but it wasn't working. Now, I wasn't someone who had a lot of authority because I was just an apprentice,
Right.
So every time the big guys would have the conversation and I would be like, oh no, maybe we should do this or maybe we should do that. I was like, oh yeah, whatever. Go ahead and try if you really think that works. But we're not going to listen. So that got me obsessed, partially because I wanted to really prove myself. I was a bit upset about the fact that, why do I need to have the status of a senior tailor for my ideas to be taken seriously if I clearly can think about it and kind of like work it out? And I thought, I just wanted to prove myself, I just wanted to be like, can I do this? And, will I get like a confirmation like, yes, good work.
Right.
So I started to do a lot of experiments. I started this journey on making shoulder pads. I must have made like, I don't know, into the hundreds. It's like many shoulder pads. Like I couldn't fit them in a suitcase. It was like a lot of shoulder pads. Yeah. And so very structurally, I kind of like made all these different adjustments until I arrived at a design that would work. However, I found out it wasn't just the shoulder pad that had to be designed. The canvas construction had to change as well. Now, as soon as you start to change canvas constructions, then basically you're telling others like, look, man, what you're doing in this domain is wrong. Now, I wasn't intending to say that, but it was the truth. If you want to make a pagoda shoulder, you cannot use the current canvas construction that we are using. So anyway, I started doing fittings and all of that, and eventually, fast forward, it got me to that jacket that I made, and it got a lot of attention, and Joe was very happy about it, because every person that would enter the shop was like, "Oh, have a look at Reza's jacket," and I, had to put on my jacket for the time, and then, I think I even got some tailors there pissed off because, I would get all the attention. But that's how it was. Funny enough, as much as Joe liked it, we never really incorporated that canvas construction. So it kind of like, I managed to do it, but we never implemented formally into the house style, let's say.
Right, right. No, that silhouette is striking. I mean, the moment you see it, it catches your eye. It is, I mean, I'm telling you, I have posted a lot of pictures. I've posted some reshares and things like that. I've never had a picture get such a reaction to that structure. I mean, it is, but you're telling me that you made that, you designed that and constructed it within your first year of working?
Well, no, first year was just work experience. So my second year of apprenticeship.
Second year of apprenticeship. Okay.
Yeah. So I would say a few things, because I have to get the story right as well. I don't want to kind of like turn it into this glorious.
The prodigal son of tailoring, Reza, has arrived.
So if Joe wasn't as generous and patient and tolerant, and if I wasn't there in that company, hearing about the conversations about a concave shoulder lines, maybe I wouldn't have made that jacket. At the same time, there was no one there who could make the jacket. So it's kind of like it's like a harmonized story. Yeah.
Sure.
And yeah, that's how it kind of like went.
So now, obviously, this is giving you some confidence. You can see what your abilities are shaping into. Fast forwarding now, you're obviously working with several people, and the seed is planted in your head. Maybe it's time I can do this on my own. And what happens at that point? How did you approach that? Jumping into the deep end of the pool had to be frightening. Walk me through that mindset of going from steady, working in the industry to, not only am I going to leave this place, but I'm going to start my own. And I'm also going to start a YouTube series where I shake up the industry by teaching people how to do this at home. So I've joked with you before where, these videos coming out, I'm sure you have the Savile Row Mafia looking to take you out, like, hey, stop teaching our secrets to everybody. So where did this happen? How did this come about?
It evolved in that when I started out on Savile Row, I had a very romantic perspective on tailoring, master tailors, tailoring, and kind of like tailoring community and all of that. And in the first maybe two, because I was only there. I mean, I'm already, well, how long am I doing this now? It's not that long. This is my 6th year being in tailoring, so I think after 2 to 3 years, I was kind of like very romantic about, the master knows everything and all the old people know everything. I am the person who doesn't know shit and I have to learn everything. I'm nothing, I'm worthless and blah, blah, blah. But I was very passionate, obviously, and I had an analytical mind. So I would still question everything that they would tell me. Even
were you made to feel that way? Or was that just something self-imposed?
No. I have to say, man, I don't know if I was the only person who got that, but Joe would really encourage me a lot. Like there were so many moments when he was like, man, like literally he would say, you're one of those people that comes around like every once in a while. And that would motivate me. Like, dude, if you hear that from your master tailor, man, you're like a rocket,
Right,
so
right.
And naturally, like just from my temp, I tend to have a lot of ambition and passion, and I'm not afraid to question authority. So that combination helped me to really question the things that I was shown,
Mhm.
and I was kind of like really pushed to get answers. And so that got me into, conversations that you don't want to say they're like really pleasant conversations, because someone tells you to do something and you're like, why? And they're like, because this. And then you're like, yeah, but why? And they're like, at some point, they're going to say, because I said so. And that's end of game, And so I would really push to that point. Now, slowly, my perspective changed, because I noticed that the master doesn't know everything. The master can make a lot of mistakes and does make a lot of mistakes. I'm getting better. And at some point, you kind of start to level out, maybe
Mhm.
you're like here. But then as you start to catch up, you start to see things that may even shock you. You're like, that's weird. I thought they would know. And so that slowly evolved. And I also noticed something else, that mastering something is not the same as learning how to do something. You can learn how to steak, let's say, in like a day, but you don't master learning, you don't master grilling a steak. And so I got a bit upset about the fact that a lot of apprentices who I would talk to would be like, I'm there for like 3 years now, and I'm only doing pockets. And I'm like, what's going on here? This is strange. Doesn't Savile Row or doesn't the tailoring company want you to prosper so that they can prosper, so that Savile Row can prosper?
Right.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if they want it or not. It's not even important. The reality is it wasn't happening. And so eventually, as I got better, things happened that created less satisfaction in me being at Chittleborough and Morgan.
Mm.
So eventually, I didn't leave. I actually got fired. And when you get fired and you see things that go wrong and you want to improve them, but the communication changes slightly, the dynamics change, that's when you also start to get frustrated. And if you're ambitious and you get angry, you probably are going to push towards your goals even harder and faster. Sure. And so when I kind of like were in the last few months of being there, I thought, someone needs to do something about, one, the educational side of things, and also about just running a company in which, a tailoring company specifically, in which the apprentices and the people who are working there actually are actively innovating and having any form of input towards the well-being of the company and the company culture, because, at some point I started to hear a lot of, this is, we are traditional tailors, we are just boring traditional tailors. And those were the signals that were thrown at me, like, hey, know your place. Don't you dare to push any further. We right. don't, And it was a bit confusing, because on one side, I was allowed to, put the pockets that I designed into a jacket. And at the same time, I was being told we're just traditional tailors. So I was like, make up your mind. What's up? And when you get confused, you start to act differently as well. And your trust lowers, Sure. And so at the end of it, I was just, I was fired because the arguments started to get more and more. And so when I got fired, I was like, right, I'm going to jump into this and I'm going to do all in, So I set up Aquila, which is the bespoke tailoring company. And after, I think, slowly, simultaneously, I thought I should probably also put out videos on YouTube on how to make a jacket. And I think the reason why I really wanted to do them was not to just show how to make a jacket, but I thought I could do a good job at explaining the whys, because I had struggled with a lot of whys, didn't get a lot of answers, but in trying to discover the whys, I did discover many other things as well. Mm-hmm. And so, when if you ask someone, how do you grill a steak, they would just tell you a formula and you do that. But you're getting an interpretation of them, mm-hmm. but not the entire journey. If you tell me how to grill a steak, you're telling that with like 30 years of experience. So that's a very different formula than me just having the formula without the experience. And so I kind of like managed to get all of the answers on the whys and the whys, and I'm kind of like figuring out things, but I thought I would do well with explaining. And so that's how it started. That's how I started to do the videos. And then it kind of like developed further because people wanted to have a pattern to go along with the videos. And I thought, well, I should now provide a pattern. But then I thought, well, I don't want to provide a pattern because I want to provide them the framework so that they could figure out their own pattern. You know, if you really want to enable people, don't give them formulas. Give them give them ways of creating formulas. You know,
right? Teach them to fish.
Exactly. Teach them to fish. And so then I started to work on this pattern cutting system that we're going to be putting out. And then I was approached by Kimberly and Matthew, who wanted to kind of like be part of it and help to speed up the process of putting out the content. So that's where we're basically at now so far.
That's awesome. And it's so exciting. You know, I watched your videos. For me, to understand, for lack of a better term, the science behind it all is very important to me. It's, you know, as we've discussed, I'm very much into barbecue, grilling over steak, and I mean, grilling over fire, live fire, and smoke. I love the reaction of what fire does to a protein.
Yeah.
I love what smoke does to a protein, how different they are. The chemical reactions that occur if you leave it for too short, if you leave it for too long. It's why, to me, I've always seen the correlation between barbecue and tailoring classic menswear, because there is so much to it. I think in designing anything, there's a lot of that same mentality. So when I learned how to grill a steak, as we were talking about, I learned, do you go on live fire first, or do you cook it to temp and then sear it? Do you use salt? Do you not? Do you salt before? Do you salt after? What kind of seasonings do you put, and why? So to watch your video, to learn this is the construction of this and this is why you do it, to me was one of the most fascinating things about your series, to the point where I almost went and bought a sewing machine myself, and I have no idea what I'm doing. But it was really inspiring to learn how this all works. You know, going back to what you were talking about, the sewing of the canvas and using the different colors. I remember seeing those pictures, and I remember just being in awe of it. And the initial thought was, why would anybody want to do that? No one's going to see it. What's the purpose of it? So you also mentioned, and this is where we kind of get into the discussion of bespoke. During your chat series that you've been doing, I saw you speak with a gentleman whose name I can't remember, but he was designing dyes from plants, and he was self-dyeing his own cloth and materials. And I thought that was so fascinating. I remember reaching out to you and just telling you my mind was blown.
His name is Alex.
Say it again. I'm sorry, I muted out.
His name is Alex Bayo.
Okay, so Mr. Bayo, he, or Alex as we'll call him, since we're all friends now. So, you know, I think of the term bespoke. Bespoke is that one-off for your body. It's thoroughly measured and everything is hand done. I find that quite often the terminology of bespoke is misused a lot today.
Yes.
But a true bespoke, I mean, talk about bespoke, getting your own dye color crafted to how you want or how this artisan has seen it. How far down the bespoke rabbit hole have you gone with some of your creations?
You mean how wild have I been going with my designs?
So not only design-wise, but materials used, handmade, hand-designed, etc.
You know, most of the things that I've done and kind of like pushed as far as I could, and I'm still kind of like pushing as far as I can, are constructions and pocket designs. I mean, if we talk about aesthetic only, then it's mainly pocket designs and themes. So I would try to think of a theme and then try to translate that into a design and then translate that design into an actual working pocket. I would say like something that you could categorize as wild that I kind of like did was when I joined the Golden Shears competition. The garment that I made for that competition was inspired by the Mediterranean Sea. And what I did was I took that lining into a set of waves. And so when you would look at it from afar, it literally looked like a helicopter picture of the ocean with the waves. And how I had to do that was I had to get a big board and then lay the lining on top and then put irregular basting lines that would attach the lining to the tablecloth.
Oh, wow.
So the lining couldn't move anymore. And every time I did a baste, I would push fabric in it. So I would trap bubbles of fabric between the bastings. And then once I was done, I would go in one direction with the iron and flatten very small pleats that eventually looked like waves on the ocean. That took quite some time. And I would say, because, you know, for me, going wild is very different than a designer going wild. I mean, I don't try to design something like with the bone of an animal attached to feathers and stuff. That's a very, you know, it's not my expertise. But within bespoke tailoring and traditional suits, I would say the pocket designs and that was, and the shoulder constructions and stuff were you could say the most rabbit hole like experiences.
So, you know, you made these videos about designing a jacket. You were speaking earlier about when you started at Chittoborough to design to help with the jackets. Mm-hmm. Why is the jacket such an important aspect? Why not trousers? Why not, you know, the vest? Why not other parts? Why is the jacket, in your opinion, such an important aspect that this would be such a focus?
Well, I think per person is different, but in general, I do understand what you mean. It seems to be that the jacket likes to get most of the attention, and people are most proud of displaying the jacket. Exactly. Well, I think there is the technical part of it, which is appealing to people, because a jacket, a very nice tailored jacket, is difficult to cut and make. So the craftsmanship that goes into the making of a very beautiful jacket is difficult. Even if the pattern is perfect, you could still mess it up with bad making. Mm-hmm. Now, it is also true that no matter how good of a tailor you are, if the pattern is really bad, then, you know, and you stick to the pattern and what the pattern tells you, you're not really going to get a nice jacket apart from your beautiful handwork. So I think because of the elements of the shoulder and the collar and sleeves, those tend to be complex constructions, especially for a beginner. And I think most of the volume, you know, a trouser, as beautiful as it's cut and shaped and made, doesn't have many features. So you could look at details like pockets or bands, but eventually at the very end you see beautiful hanging pipes, two beautiful hanging pipes with a nice crease. Now, a jacket, however, when thrown on a mannequin, if everything is made nicely, you see a lot of volume, you see a lot of complexity. You see a shoulder, you see a collar going over the shoulder into the chest, you see lapels roll, you see a voluminous sleeve. You know, there is a lot of things going on there. And I think that that's what catches the eye of the viewer, the complexity. At least the harmonious complexity, which seems to be tamed by the tailor.
Wow, you need to quote that. You need to make that like a tagline or something.
I think that along these lines, yeah.
So, you know, when you look at, and you're talking about pocket design, you're talking about these different constructions. I was watching a video the other day, can't remember who it was, really wish I could recall, but they were talking about drape versus shape, and combining even drape and shape together in a jacket. For you, what do you like to tend towards? Do you go for the more form-fitting, shapely, or do you like more of the traditional drape, or do you look for a combination of the two?
Let's see. I would say probably, you know, it happens to be that whether you have or you don't have drape, you're still dealing with shape. So if by shape you mean a structured, close-fitted look versus drape, personally, I like the more structured and less the closer look, let's say, the closer fit. However, it's not something I would recommend for every person. So one of the things, for example, that I noticed when I was on Savile Row was that companies made it easier for themselves in terms of efficiency by adopting a house style that was based on someone's preference, and they would just do that as much as they could on every person. Now, efficiency-wise, that's great because you don't need to mess around too much with different constructions.
Right.
But style-wise, it doesn't really work for everyone. And so I would look at the person and really try to extract the essence of their look, their natural look as a person, like their facial features, you know, the shape of the skull, jaws, eyebrows, you know, everything, nose, ears, everything. And then I would try to see which model or which fit would enhance those things in a good way. Because, you know, if someone looks like, if someone looks very, you know, disciplinarian, let's say, like military, military look, you can just put like a very flamboyant Italian, soft, loose style jacket on them, but it may, depending on who the person is, it may look weird. It may look a bit silly, or it could work, but you have to kind of like play around with those ideas and see how you can harmonize the person's essence into the garments, you know?
Right.
For me, I look very silly if I, because I tend to have fairly low shoulders. I look very silly in a very soft jacket or tailored jacket, and I wouldn't have it easy, you know, that easy. So I would really try to consider, even if I did want to have it, you know, how is this really going to work on me, you know? So I would personally prefer something closer in fit.
Perfect. And I love that you brought up the house style, because I put out, you know, a question box when I was posting my stories, and I offered the ability for other people to ask you questions as well. And this is actually one of the questions that came in. I'm popping it up on the screen now. Sure. What's your house style? So would you say that you have one that's, you know, a definitive, somebody looks at a garment that you make, a jacket in particular, they can say, you know what, that jacket was designed by Reza?
Well, you know, there is a quote from Bruce Lee, which I tend to like a lot. And he says, the best style is no style. And you know, I guess I can only assume, I guess what he meant by that is that you have to be as fluent as you can in what you're doing so that you choose the best and the most appropriate method for dealing with a given situation. Now, I have a preference towards structured clothing, and so that's my bias, let's say. And I also I'm obsessed with details at the same time. So I tend to pay attention to a lot of details and try to create very fine details that you wouldn't see anywhere else, like a unique pocket design, or like the themes inside the canvas, or like a very specific shoulder line, things like that. And but I don't always keep, you know, I don't see them as holy or something, you know.
Right, right.
I do tend to break a lot of my own rules, and try to deal with the person, the design as appropriate as I can, you know.
Right.
I never want to fall into a habit when it comes down to creativity. You know, you know, when you're creative, you tend to develop yourself towards a style, which is why a lot of creative people, when they get older, they tend to be recognizable, which is a very good thing, because they narrow down their preferences into one specific style, whether they're a garment designer or a graphic designer or whatsoever, a filmmaker, you know. But I really like to explore my own full creative potential in ways that may not be recognizable as the work of Reza or the work of, you know, whoever. But it does allow me to learn a lot and to remain curious. That's
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring this up, because also another question that came up, obviously these ideas, these inspirations, these designs and things, there had to be something along the way, and here's the question, that caught your attention. So who has inspired you the most sartorially?
Oh,
Currently or historically?
oh man, that's a very difficult question. I would,
Okay.
well, I could say, I think sartorially, because I don't tend to look a lot of look up a lot of sartorial things, you know.
Okay.
But I would say the person who probably influenced me most, and that's because he was really the first person that introduced me to tailoring in the full sense, and the world of Savile Row and a tailor shop. It has to probably be Joe Morgan. I think he had the biggest influence, in the sense that that was the first place I kind of like started. You know, I was introduced to most of the basic things during my apprenticeship through him, and I think I liked the way he dressed, and I like the way that I like the direction that kind of like he tried to aspire to. But then I kind of like took that on board and slowly tried to give it my own twist. Anyone else except from that I would look at and be like, oh, this is like the man, or someone who really had a massive impact in terms of style, I think it's the painter Leyendecker. For some reason I can't remember his first name, but his paintings were very much in line with the imagination that I had in terms of style and how something should fit. And so I would say those two. But it's not in a way that I always refer to them, you know. So they impacted me at a very important stage, but at the moment it's not like I'm trying to recreate what I saw in them, or what I thought they were kind of like trying to communicate. There was something I thought of, and I thought, you know, when you look at someone who does something you want to do really well, you're not seeing them. You're seeing yourself at your best, but you're not yourself at your best yet. And so you find someone on who you can project your ideal, and then they turn into God for you. You know what I mean? Until you catch up, and then you have to find another ideal, you know. And so that's what I would say. Those were my ideals more than they were kind of like sartorial inspirations.
Gotcha.
And they had significant impact.
You know, speaking of art, and you coming from the design, and interesting that you talk about getting inspiration from
Mm.
artists and things like that. When it comes to tailoring, obviously there's some correlation there, but you wouldn't think that it's, you know, such a direct one. But
Hmm.
as a tailor, you are an artist. And so this kind of leads to the next question.
Hmm.
When you have someone come in, a customer come in or a client who's starting with you, when can you really tell that they've appreciated the art and craft of Bespoke? You know, obviously they're coming to you for a reason.
Hmm.
And so kind of two questions, right? You can identify it. And do you prefer the client who comes in says, I know exactly what I want? Or
Hmm.
they come to you and they say, you know what? I appreciate your imagination.
Hmm.
Make me look good.
Well, obviously the second one. However, if the first option happens to be in the context of I know exactly what I want and you're the only person that does it or can do it, then I would like that as well. You know, for me, art and craft in general is beyond anything, it's a process. And a process can be predefined just to give you some structure so that you don't go any direction.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it has to be developed. It has to be explored. And what I like to do a lot is explore. You know, there is a fun foundation. A client can say, "Hey, I have something in this direction that I'm thinking of, or I've seen what you do and I quite like it. Maybe we could do something." I would never say, "Okay, let me just do my own thing." You know, I'd like input, I'd like development, and I'd like exploration, and I can only do that really successfully along with the client, unless the client says, I'm not interested in the process. Just give me the best you've got, and I love it. You know, then that's a different story. Then I will probably do the exploration phase with whoever is working with me. Um, yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah.
So I know for me, when I am cooking or prepping, I love music going on in the background.
Yeah.
Music is such an integral part of my day to day. It's on almost all the time. I didn't do it today just because I didn't want to drown out everything. But what about for you? What's your music style when you are working that helps you kind of stay focused and in the imaginative mode?
Huh. Well, it varies. I can listen to very aggressive techno or drum and bass or
So I have
you know.
to say right off the bat, a Salvo Row Taylor rocking out to drum and bass just creates such an imaginative experience and scene.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes. You you speak to Tom Bennett. He was actually a DJ, a techno DJ, who's also a bespoke tailor. But I would say that I listen to classical Iranian music, traditional Iranian music. I listen to um, classical music in general sometimes, if only if it's epic and warlike.
Right.
So that I listen to film music because it has some sort of a narrative and it's most of the time very epic, you know, and
Hmm.
it has a lot of uh, ambience. Um, yeah, instrumentals I tend to listen to. 90s hip hop I love. Um, what else?
That's one heck of a spectrum.
It tends to be very broad. Yes, I don't have I don't have one favorite music style, but as long as it can enhance the creativity and it enhance the mood or describe the mood at that given moment, then I'll accept it.
Nice. So,
Yeah,
you know, I'm gonna go on the favorites route now.
sure.
So, you know, we've obviously I'm very much into barbecue. You've
Mhm.
expressed that you enjoy it very much during our conversations. What is your ideal plate of barbecue?
Oh man.
You're coming to Miami. You're like, hey Mitch, I'm headed into Miami. I know
All
you
right.
do barbecue. I want you to cook me something. What am I making?
Okay. We have to hunt it first.
We have to. Oh, okay. So hunting in Miami is going to be a little bit difficult. We'll have to go somewhere else for that. But if you want to hunt it, what are we hunting and what are we making?
Um, I'm not really fussy on what we are hunting as long as it's not going to be wasteful or as long as it's going to be delicious. I don't mind. As long as we can hunt it ourselves without the equipment of a nuclear bomb, then that's fine. So
Okay.
I would say it has to be made on fire, like actual fire. So yeah, charcoal maybe, yes, fire a lot better. Definitely has to be smoked because you will be the master, the pit master at that point. So it would be a very strange thing not to smoke it. Um, I would say perhaps wild boar, maybe.
Great choice. So we can actually get those here in Florida. We just got to go a little bit north.
And you actually can hunt it as
We
well.
can, absolutely.
Right. So wild boar on a fire, with your expertise, I would trust you. I would. That's my only criteria, and I would just leave it up to your art, and I would learn. I would take notes. I may ask a lot of questions up to the point of annoyance. Um,
I have 3 children. I'm used to it.
but yeah, I think that would be it. I
That
think.
sounds awesome. So get to Miami soon. We'll go hunt us some wild boar and we'll smoke it up because wild boar is, when done properly, might be some of the most delicious bites on the planet.
So, what do you suggest as a drink?
So, for me in particular, I have a very strange reaction to alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm not against it, I just can't have it. But
Right.
I do believe alcohol and barbecue, smoked food in particular, go very well with each other. So I would say it's got to be something smooth, and it's got to be something pungent enough to match the boar, because boar can be, on the gamier side. So it'd have to be something like a nice smooth whiskey, a bourbon, a cognac, somewhere in there. And I would even go so far as to cold smoke the spirits to give it that extra little something to match along with the food.
Right now, but hold on. I'm not gonna have a drink if you're not gonna have it. So what would you, if you didn't have alcohol, what would you have?
So interestingly, I would go with a sweetened iced tea.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Okay.
sweetened iced tea, just to kind of offset that richness that I'm going to get from the food.
I happen to like iced tea. Would we make it ourselves?
Yes, we would have to make it ourselves. Brown sugar as the
Yeah.
sweetener.
All right. Okay. Okay. And do you use a specific type of tea?
No. So, what do I know about tea? I'm in Miami. So, I grew up on Lipton iced tea for all, for all I know. I just grab some tea bags and brew them, and that's fancy enough as it gets down here. If it's not a powder. See, this is another conversation we need to have on proper teas and proper tea times, because, what do I know?
I look very much forward to the day that I'm going to be visiting you, and we're going to have wild boar on fire. That
No, listen, if you're coming down here, we're going to make a trip out of it and hunt it. Absolutely.
Yeah, yes, and I will be a student next to you.
That would, listen, that would be the ultimate pleasure. So if you're not here, if you're in London, what are the good barbecue spots in London that you've been able to enjoy? Are there any?
Mitchell, that's a heavy question on my heart, man. I am so in love with making food on fire, and I've been deprived of it for probably most of the time that I've been in London. I mean, I have had the occasional fire when I go on holiday, but I tend to spend, because moving to London, going through the apprenticeship, transitioning into setting up 2 companies now, kind of like developing them, has been a very quick, dense trajectory for me. Like I said, I'm only in this game for like 6 years now. That's not a lot of time, but I have compressed like 10 years into those 6 years, because I've been working very long days, and I continue to do so. So I don't get a lot of time to explore my wild man side with fire, although I do feel an urge. I haven't explored a lot of places in London for barbecue.
Okay.
And that was probably because I knew I couldn't really make a proper fire. Because, you know, you're not really allowed to. There are some parks where you're allowed to make fire, but most of the places you're not really allowed to make fire, unless it's like one of those safe barbecue boxes that you can kind of like, you know, that doesn't get me, you know, working.
Right.
I
know several UK-based barbecue caterers and, you know, backyard aficionados. So I will certainly reach out to them and have them get you their contact information if you're craving it.
Yeah.
I think we can get you a temporary fix until you get here.
A temporary,
you know.
temporary fix and the booster after that. Then
yes. You need at least 2 temporary fixes and then the booster thereafter to fix it all for you.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
So I did have another. You know, you launched. You mentioned you launched Akela.
Yeah.
Explain, in case somebody here who's watching, who watches afterward, how you got the name, what Akela is, and then I've got another follow-up question to that.
Sure, no problem. So, as I was working on Savile Row, one of the things that I was very much obsessed about was innovation, because I was doing it myself, and I found it strange that the company I was working for, or any company within Savile Row, didn't have a structured way of making innovation happen. And at the same time, there were some other side things, like, for example, the cutter would get most of the credit, and I think it still is. Like when you talk to a client and they say, and you ask the person who made your suit, it's very likely that they would say the company name or the cutter's name. Very rarely does it happen that they also happen to know who made the suit, because, you know, the tailors are at the back, they're kind of like cursing away as they are working, you know, burning a bit of cloth and kind of like just rubbing it out and washing it away, and that kind of like annoyed me a little bit, because I thought, well, this is a procedure that many people are involved with. Like, for example, many people don't know the name of the finishers. I mean, now it's becoming more and more, but most of the time, as far as I know, the finisher was this anonymous Chinese lady who would just walk in very quickly and then walk out very quickly, and no one says hi, thank you, whatever. It was just like, here, can you give it tomorrow? Yes, okay, fine, blah blah blah. Now, I thought I didn't like that, and so as I was kind of like making up my mind of, you know, what am I going to do if I set up my own company, one of the stories that I was drawn to was The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. And what I liked about that story, I mean, I gave it my own little twist, but what I kind of like liked about that story was that I managed to draw an analogy or a similar situation to creative people. So imagine in The Jungle Book, you have Mowgli. Mowgli is a man cub, as they call him, and he's there in the jungle. And he's not made for the jungle, and so he's adopted by the wolves, and the leader of the wolf pack is called Akela. So for me, this is how the story then goes in my own mind. Creative people are like Mowgli. They have something special about them, but the society or environment they function in can be too harsh for them, because as a creative, you like to do and explore things that normal conformed people don't want to explore or think about. So you have to be trained and developed by someone who knows the laws of the jungle and can get prepared so that you can one day go back to the man village, and the man village being society.
Right.
And I thought, you know, creative people have a lot of important things to give to society. Like one of my personal values is that whatever I do creatively has to serve society as profound as I can make it. Maybe that's going to be a bit profound or very profound. I don't know. But I would like to think that whatever I create has to serve a purpose. It should influence someone. It should solve a problem. It should do good in a way that other people can benefit from it. And I thought, well, Akila is going to be the wolf that takes on Mowgli's, the creative, and prepares them in the best possible way so that they can expand their creativity to the fullest, so that they could give it back to society. And that is also the reason why at Akila, the artisan is at the highest level. That's who we aspire to be at the highest level and who we kind of worship. But you just become a figure of worship within Akila. There, you have to achieve the 10 pillars of the Akila artisan to be called a full-fledged artisan that is worthy of worship, of praise, of imitation. And what those 10 pillars are, I'm not going to go into that for now, but that remains something for another conversation. But that's basically the essence of Akila. Provide the highest level of excellence through rigorous training and praise for the artisan, you know, so that one day when a client does get a suit made, it's not just made by Akila, but it's also made by the Akila artisan and the philosophy behind the company.
That is so awesome. I mean, it's really, really, really cool. And, you know, it's interesting that you brought all this up because I did get another question while we were having this conversation, which is, and I think it's really apropos, it's this. What advice do you have for first time? Oh, no, not that one. Sorry, hit the wrong one. Hold on. It was such a good question that it got me confused. Hold
Sure.
on. Where'd it go? Oh, I lost it. Well, the question was, and it fits perfectly, is what advice do you have someone who wants to become a tailor now? Other than joining Akila, what advice would you give someone who's imaginative, who's looking to not follow the status quo of designing, and wants to be creative in this structured world? What advice would you give them?
Learn to think.
Oh, we're missing that so much today in general.
Yes, I would say learn to think formally and learn to create systems, mental models in which you can understand things that are new to you, because that allows you to explore the unknown. And you need to know what to do if you don't know what to do. And you know,
I love that. I'm gonna copy that too. I'm quoting that later on.
Sure. And so mental models and a systematic approach to things allows you to deconstruct a complex matter into smaller things that you can analyze and understand first before you join them together as a whole. And I think if you have that skill and you develop that skill, then you will find your way, whatever that way is going to be, in any given situation that you're going to find yourself in. And perhaps another thing that I could say is never, ever, ever blindly trust any instruction that you're given until you're explained the why in a scientific way. If you ask someone, why is it done like this? And they don't give you variables, case studies, and an actual physical example, something that you also can observe, and they just say, well, because then it goes round. You know, what do you mean with round? What goes round? How does it go round? Where does it go? You know, you don't settle for vague explanations. Get your aggressive side out and kind of like push with the questions.
And so now we're going to flip it around. I'm visiting a tailor for the first time. What advice do you have for the client?
Hmm.
And this is why I love these live chats.
um, I think the best advice that I could give a client going to a tailor for the first time would be to notice how your tailor deals with a mistake or failure. Be wary of that, because that's the situation where, you know, they could really show you that they are because you don't know. You know, if you go to a tailor for the first time and you're super knowledgeable, then I don't think it's the first time you've been going to a tailor.
Right.
So I assume you don't know anything if you're going to a tailor for the first time. In practice, I mean, you may know bits and pieces here and there from blogs or magazines, but you really don't know in practice, you know? And so pay attention, I would say, and ask a lot of questions and see what your tailor does with your questions. And if things go well, give your tailor a challenge, you know? Try to notice the mistakes, try to notice anything that you think is wrong, and ask about it. You know, if you see a blip, if you see a bad stitch, if you see a weird machining, it's something that's not neat, notice those things. Look at the tiny handwork and be demanding, you know? Be demanding. That's the one. Be as demanding as you can within reason.
And so there, within reason, like, what are the expectations of a client? Should they expect perfection to their eye, or what their standard is, or do we get close enough?
You know, it's difficult to expect perfection when perfection is defined differently by you and the tailor.
Sure.
And so I would say, I think most people can tell if a line that is supposed to be straight is going.
It's correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Or if a stitch or if a stitch that is supposed to be very fine is suddenly very big or very rough. I think as long as you notice those things and you ask your tailor to do them well, and if you see any puckering anywhere that you think it shouldn't be there, or, you know, weird things, whatever you notice that looks wrong, make note of that and ask for it to be corrected.
Mm-hmm.
And if your tailor gives you a weird, vague statement like, oh, you know, that's just because, you know, we are trying to, you know, get in touch with the muse or whatsoever, you know, or, you know, or they actually tell you that that's supposed to be there.
Right.
That's dangerous. You know, if something goes wrong and your tailor says, oh, actually that's impossible to fix because it's supposed to be there, I mean, don't beat them up for that, because there are sometimes things that are just the way they are and you cannot get around them, but you can still try to get around them.
Sure.
That's the thing. And so if you pay attention how they deal with difficulties, if you get the feeling that they're really trying, then that's good. Because, you know, some of the things that I've seen is like, client walks in, asks for the jacket to be pressed. Jacket doesn't get pressed because it doesn't look that bad, but the client is still told, like, hey, we press your jacket. You have to be careful for those things. Or the client walks in and they're like fussy about some minor detail and they want it to be altered. It doesn't get altered. It just gets pressed temporarily. And then they're like, oh, we did alter it, you know? Those are the things you really have to watch out for, because you can't always find out about them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, yeah, that's roughly what I would say.
Second to last question. So your Instagram tag or handle is hot needle burning thread.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
I was in Newham College. It was the first, I think it was the third or the fourth, within the first week. I think it was the fourth day. And I learned very quickly. Like, I was extremely eager. As soon as the teacher showed how to use the thimble, I was already sewing, and I was ahead of the class. On the fourth day, I was testing my speed, and I was taking a piece of calico, and I was like trying to pad as quick as I could, and my arm was just going like
Right.
that. And one of our teachers, who was I think she wasn't Jamaican. She was from Saint Lucia, I think. She was from the Caribbean. I think Saint Lucia. She walked past and she saw that, and I'm not going to do the accent, but in her accent, she said, "You're a hot needle and burning thread." And I said, "Why do you say that?" And she said, "That's what my grandma would call someone who was very fast and quick with a needle." And so that's how I got the name. And so I just used it for the Instagram.
That's awesome. What a great story. That's really cool. I love that. You need like a motorcycle jacket with the placard across the back with that name on it.
You could do that. Well, you could, you could develop it into a prize. You know, if the first person who makes a jacket based on the YouTube series gets the Hot Needle and Burning Thread Award.
The Burning Thread Award.
Yeah.
And lastly, what's on the horizon for you, Akela? Where are you headed with that, and what can we expect next?
Well, so I'm doing two things at the moment. There is Akela, which is high-end luxury bespoke tailoring company that produces the best that we are able to manage. And the other thing that's going to be the International School of Tailoring. And so everything I'm doing in terms of education is going to fall under that. And there is one main goal with that, and that is unlock the frozen talent of tailoring on a worldwide scale as quickly and as cheaply as you can. All the videos on YouTube are for free. So everything I know and everything I ever will discover in tailoring will be available for free. I will not charge to teach anyone anything as long as I can make a video on YouTube. So that's the main goal on that. With Akela, the goal that we have is to train the highest to have ever existed team of artisans and then have them turn into a myth. A legend. And
Love
so
it.
what I would like is in 100 years time, people to refer to the myth of Akela and the artisans it had and the things they created. That's basically the horizon that I'm kind of like low resolution wise.
Man, I don't think there's a better way to end this conversation. Reza, I can't thank you enough for your time. This was amazing. You know, some of the feedback that we got was how enlightening it was and how enjoyable it was to listen. I look forward to doing this much more often. And hopefully one day I can either fly out there or you can fly down here and we will get to meet each other in person and share that wild boar. I really look forward to it. Man, thank you for inviting me. I'm so sorry for having delayed the planning of this interview for so long. It's okay. But I would like to say that I look forward, likewise, to see Mitchell and the things that he provides to us in terms of knowledge around the barbecue videos. Please do that, man. I promised you now for a year that I'm going to start getting better at it. I'll do my best. I promise. I look forward to that. Thank you so much. Reza, thank you again. Have a fantastic day. Everyone who's joined us and provided the feedback and the questions, thank you as well. And have a fantastic day, sir. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.